Greetings, friends. I am Vitaly Portnikov. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, in an address to the nation, urged compatriots to be ready for new hybrid attacks, on the model of those that have already taken place in recent days and led to the closure of airspace over the airports of Copenhagen, Aalborg, and other Danish cities. Mette Frederiksen stressed that we are now at the very beginning of a hybrid war against Europe, and that there is at least one country on the continent that is interested in this hybrid war and further destabilization. This is the Russian Federation. It should be emphasized that the Danish authorities have not yet accused Russia directly of organizing attacks on their country's airspace. And when the Minister of Balloons of Latvia said that in Copenhagen they were talking about the involvement of a subject state in these attacks, without even calling Russia by name, Denmark hastened to refute this information. Nevertheless, the fact that it is Russia that may be interested in attacks on Danish airspace leaves no doubt, against the background of other events that have been taking place in recent weeks. This is also the invasion of Russian drones into Polish airspace. This is also the invasion of Russian fighter jets into Estonian airspace. This is also the invasion of Russian drones into Romanian airspace. This is also a cyber attack on the leading airports of European countries. This is the appearance of Russian combat aircraft in the immediate vicinity of the airspace of the United States of America, near the state of Alaska. Yes, the very state where the summit of Presidents Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin recently took place. This is the appearance of drones in the airspace of not only Denmark, but also neighboring Norway. And just this morning, the Swedish police said that a drone was detected in the airspace of this country, not far from the city of Karlskrona, that is, in close proximity to the airspace of Denmark itself. The Danish Ministry of Defense, meanwhile, says they already have photos of drones and information that can determine who launched them, and for what purpose. At the same time, it is quite obvious that the launch of drones designed to paralyze air traffic in Denmark and scare residents could be carried out from the territory of this country or neighboring countries. What are the goals of hybrid warfare? If you represent Russia as its organizer, well, there are quite a lot of goals. The first goal is to frighten the population of European countries and convince them of the danger of further assistance to Ukraine. This goal itself already leads to a number of important consequences for the Russian state. So, the second goal is to reduce military aid to Ukraine. European capitals may say that it is necessary to increase their own military budgets and thus accumulate weapons for themselves, and that the money that European countries are now spending on the purchase of American weapons for Ukraine could well go to increase European arsenals, in particular when it comes to air defense systems. They can obviously, from the point of view of many Europeans, be much more important for their countries than for Ukraine, which is fighting Russian aggression and Russian aerial terror. Another important result is an increase in the ratings of ultra-right and ultra-left political entities that have long maintained close ties with the Kremlin. Vladimir Putin has already invested enough financial and political efforts in the functioning of these entities to refuse to help them in their political heyday. Let's recall how the ratings of the European far right have increased after the migration crisis in Syria. And now Russia's hybrid war against European countries can have almost the same impact, and in addition, strengthen anti-migrant relations in Europe in relation to the citizens of Ukraine fleeing from the war. And all this also plays into the hands of Vladimir Putin. Moreover, let's not forget the immutable fact that today the European far right can simultaneously enjoy support from both the Kremlin and the White House, which will facilitate their coming to power, and, let's say, a benevolent dialogue with the President of the Russian Federation. up to a decrease in support for Ukraine in the coming period of the Russian-Ukrainian war. And, of course, provoking a crisis in Europe itself. Because even on the issue of reaction to the Russian attacks, Europeans are already divided, and there are those among European politicians who believe that it is necessary to react decisively, that it is necessary to shoot down European aircraft, drones and missiles in their own airspace and even in the airspace of Ukraine. And there are those who believe that there is no need to rush to hasty decisions and provoke Moscow, because if its missiles and drones are destroyed in the airspace of NATO member countries, this could create favorable ground for the Russian Federation for a much more serious retaliatory strike and lead to a big war. Therefore, the hybrid war itself is a clear road to destabilize the situation in countries hostile to the Russian Federation. And I think we understand perfectly well that we are talking about hostile countries. And, by the way, the fact that Denmark has become one of the first targets for Russian efforts is also not surprising, because the government of this country constantly and consistently supports Ukraine. Moreover, it is Denmark that is currently purchasing offensive weapons from the United States for Ukraine in its confrontation with Russian aggression. The purchase of these offensive weapons is clearly something that is not part of Vladimir Putin's plans. And in this way, the Russian president may try to punish Copenhagen for being too active in the defense of Ukraine from Russian aggression. Well, and the technological turn in the war. We also need to understand that it is he who helps Russia organize a completely different hybrid war, which differs in essence from those hybrid wars that Russia previously waged on the European continent. Now it is possible to launch drones from Russian territory through Ukrainian airspace into the airspace of neighboring countries and claim that Russia has no real participation in the appearance of its drones in Poland or Romania, which is all the results. As Donald Trump himself said, by the way, Ukrainian attacks on Russian drones, and it is possible to launch drones from the territory of European countries themselves. We have seen how this happens, for example, in the famous Ukrainian Operation Web against the Russian Air Force, and then also be not involved in strikes on European infrastructure facilities. And if so far the appearance of Russian dons looks more like hooliganism, then the moment will come when this kind of invasion will lead to real consequences with the destruction of infrastructure and the death of people. Sooner or later, Europeans will have to admit that a hybrid war is still a war. Thank you, friends. Stay on this channel, subscribe to it, subscribe to my social networks, to channels in Patreon BAME Donatello Coffee, which helps to develop those resources. Use the sponsorship function in YouTube itself. The world